Welcome to Plus Talk on Plus Life, where we're all about turning positive into a plus. Today, my guest is Craig Thompson. He is the CEO of APLA Health here in LA. Talk about an organization that really does turn positive into a plus and helps so many people. Craig, great to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
Oh, absolutely, Carl. Great to be on.
We're going to dive straight in today. There's something called SB 258. It's the HIV and Aging Act, and California is the second state to adopt a bill like this. What is SB 258, and why do those of us living with HIV need to know about it?
So it's kind of a technical piece of legislation, but it's a really important one. What it does is it works within the administrative systems of the state of California by defining people with HIV, older people with HIV, as essentially a priority population. So that means whenever the Department of Aging is looking at services and need, it needs to specifically now look at the needs of older people living with HIV. So this means both for funding, for research, but everything. It now puts us at the top of the list for consideration for services.
And this is so important because, and you and I have talked about this before, the reality is that the HIV population is aging, and
Absolutely.
in a lot of ways, our systems were not set up for this. So what are some of the challenges that low-income HIV seniors face?
Well, I think, first of all, there's a couple of things we need to remember. A lot of the people that we're talking about are people who went out on an HIV disability at some time, and their health never really rebounded. So and it may have been that they were on medications before the medications were entirely effective, so that they have side effects from the medications lingering, et cetera. But there's a large section of the population. In LA, it's probably 10,000, of whom we see over 3,000 folks that are on an HIV disability, and that means that they are they're older than their years, if you will. So they may only be 50 or 55, but they've been living with HIV for 20 or 25 years. They had a whole course of bad treatment in the early days, and so they have much higher rates of cardiovascular disease, of end-stage cancers. They've been out on a disability, which means they're generally living on a $900 a month check. So their income is a real problem. And they've been living at that kind of a level for 10, 15, 20 years. So it's a combination of very low income and significant health complications that these folks are facing.
Yeah, and I said there at the top, California is only the second state in the country to make this designation. Given that HIV/AIDS, we're 40 years we're celebrating HIV
Right.
this year. Why are we only the second state in the country to have adopted this? Why is it taking so long?
Well, I think there's been so much focus on ending the epidemic. And you and I have had these conversations about U equals U and PrEP and everything. And so really, and particularly then as COVID came along, the focus was really all about prevention. And the idea was that was going to end the epidemic. And unfortunately, older people with HIV in some ways just sort of got pushed aside through the enthusiasm of we were going to end the epidemic. Now, there have been a few organizations around the country that have been working on this. We started 3 years ago. So we started with a bill. It didn't get anywhere. Last year, nothing got anywhere because of COVID. But this year we came back and it was very well received. And there's a stronger understanding every day of the greater needs of older Americans with HIV.
And, you guys co-sponsored by APLA Health, Equality California, SAGE, the LA LGBT Center. What exactly does co-sponsoring a bill mean? What does that entail?
Well, so somebody really helps carry the bill, and that, a legislator, but also one organization. They really work with the legislator on the concept, the idea. But then what you do is you go out and you pick strategically important organizations with a similar mission. You ask them to co-sponsor. They help with some of the amendments and the draft, but they also help do the legwork. And then what happens in getting the votes a lot of legislators and their staff don't have a lot of time to really dig into every piece of legislation. So if you have a particular legislator who knows SAGE really well and sees that a bill that SAGE is co-sponsoring, they start with the idea, well, that's something I'm going to vote for unless I hear for a reason why not. So this was a unanimous vote in the California legislature, in part because we lined up the co-sponsors, critical organizations like the Center, Equality California, SAGE, et cetera.
It's just one of the amazing things that APLA Health does, and I'm so proud to be associated with you guys. Of course, AIDS Walk LA is coming up this year,
Absolutely.
Which we're all, again virtually, but can't wait to be a part of. I want to talk about older people living with HIV. The reality is that they continue in this day and age to face discrimination at really alarming levels, and the stigma is still rampant, almost more so for older folks who have had to live through the original hell of HIV/AIDS. Why do you think this still exists in 2021, Craig?
Well, I think there's still a tremendous amount of fear about contracting HIV. And so being around people that are positive, it's still, it's just bad information. As you and I know, both, being able to acquire HIV, but also what it means now to get an HIV diagnosis in 2022 is nothing like it was in 1984 or 1986. But those old memories live on for very many people. And so I think that piece, I think there's a huge amount of this is still homophobia. I think we're, or transphobia, but and now increasingly as this is an epidemic of people of color, it's racism. So a lot of folks are out there and they're saying, well, who's getting HIV and who needs help? Well, it's low-income Black and brown people, low-income Black and brown gay men and trans folks, right? And so these are populations that a lot of folks just don't have any interest in helping for really terrible reasons. So I think it's a combination of lack of education, lack of awareness, and then I think that there is there's a long-standing understanding about for the original folks that are out there who got very much ostracized. So they got HIV in the early 80s. Many of them bear the markings you can tell of many years living with HIV. And there is unfortunately tremendous stigma even in the gay community against those folks. And they feel very isolated. They feel like people don't support them. People look at them and say, oh, that's a person who has AIDS. And instead of saying that's a person who has AIDS, I should go up and talk to them. There's a person with AIDS. I don't want anything to do with him. And I don't want my friends to see me talking to him.
I end up speechless because anyway. You guys at APLA Health have an amazing array of services. For those who might not know, those who are older, over the age of 50, who are living with HIV, what are some of the services that are currently available to folks that are on disability or that are just older and living with HIV that they just might not know about but really should?
Well, there's two different sets of services. So for folks where income is really the issue, there's housing support that can help with your rent and your utilities. And there's also our food program, which will provide basically 100% of the food that you need for a month. And so those are ways that we can help people. And we have benefits and case management. So for lower income people, we can help you navigate the system. We can help you get to your doctor's appointments. We can help you with income support. So that's really important if you're doing pretty well, but your issues are income. Now, and then in addition to that, we have a whole series of programs addressing all the psychosocial impact. So if your issue is that you are lonely, you don't feel like you have any friends, perhaps you're an AIDS survivor where the majority of your peer group died 15 or 20 years ago. You're increasingly older. You may not have any family members based on, connections that were lost years ago, either over your HIV status or over being gay. And so for those folks, we have our Hive program, which is really about connecting older adults with HIV. And it's everything from group walks to coffee chats to cooking lessons to lectures on mindfulness and being well and making the best out of your situation. So it's educational and emotional support. And then our mental health team is always there to help you if you need even more support around the challenges, the emotional challenges of living with HIV. I will say also, COVID has hit all of us, and COVID was extremely challenging. But think about being trapped in a really small apartment, not being able to go outside, living on $900 a month, not very connected anyway, and now completely disconnected from the world for 16, 17 months. So we're seeing a lot of people and in total fear that if you caught COVID with your HIV, you were going to be in serious health consequences, have serious health consequences. So we're also dealing now with bringing people back from COVID, getting them out, getting them understand now that they're vaccinated, what the risk really is, and how we can hopefully pick up and move on with our lives.
If people want more information about the services that you guys offer at APLA Health, how can they go about it, Craig?
aplahealth.org is the easiest way. And the phone numbers and the website, it's very user friendly. You can also call 213-201-1600 and ask for our aging programs or Hive. Or if you specifically say, gosh, I have HIV, I'm low income and I need food, ask the receptionist about food and they'll click you right through.
And we'll make sure we put all of those up on the screen as well. Craig Thompson, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the victory with SB 258. And I'll see you virtually for AIDS Walk LA.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Carl, for bringing this issue out to everyone. It's really important that people know.
Well, we're glad we can be of service and partner with you guys. That's going to do it for this episode of Plus Talk. With a lot of information we talked about, we'll make sure we put it up on the website, pluslifemedia.com. We'll also put all those contact details so that if you want to reach out to APLA Health, it'll all be there as well. And don't forget, you can follow us across social media platforms. We are at pluslifemedia.com and at pluslifemedia. Until next time, thanks so much. Stay safe. We'll see you later.